Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be visiting with our guest here in just a minute. I do want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. We'll do it again during the show, of course. I want to say thanks to Gipper, Vital Signs Wall of Fame. I want to say thanks to Snap, Raise, and Huddle. I want to say thank you to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack, Sideline Interactive. We'd like to thank Home Campus, Ohio University, and their online masters in athletic administration, and Hometown. You heard me say before, these are all great companies. I used them. You should be using them too. So please go and visit them after you listen to the interview. And don't forget to mention the podcast. Here we go. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to Texas today, and our guest is Ashley McDonough. Ashley has an incredible background in athletics. She was a college coach for many years, still involved in college recruiting. Plus, she has her own venture, and she's going to share that with us. But Ashley McDonough, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me on today. Appreciate it.
We were talking before the show. I saw your profile on LinkedIn where we get a number of our guests, and I was intrigued by your background and thought you'd be a great guest. So let's go and jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Ashley McDonough origin story?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, but I moved to Houston, Texas when I was 13. Dad got a job transfer down there, and that's where I went to high school and to college. And so I spent a good chunk of my adult life and teenage years in Houston, Texas. Went to the University of Houston, went to San Jack Junior College, all that down there. I started college coaching. Well, let me back it up. I guess I started just coaching around 2007, 2008, club teams, high school varsities, things like that. I was a multi-sport kid growing up, in high school, varsity cross country, varsity volleyball. And then around 2010, we got a new coaching staff at the University of Houston. And so, kind of on a whim, I sent over the new head coach at the time an email and basically was just like, hey, I'm from the area. I've been coaching here for a while, club teams, high school teams, things like that. You guys need someone to show you around, more or less. And would you be interested in allowing me to come and be a volunteer with your program? So I went in and met with the coaching staff and I found myself working with them for about a year or so until they took off to the University of Cincinnati. And I stayed in the Houston area, continued coaching club and varsity programs. And then about a year and a half after that point, launched off to full-time head coaching in the collegiate level. Cayuga Community College in Syracuse, New York first, and then went on to Knox College in Western Illinois, and then found myself down at Centenary College, Louisiana, in Shreveport, Louisiana, before I finally pulled the plug on collegiate coaching. So,
I want to hear about all of that in our next segment, but I want to go all the way back to growing up. What was that setting like for you? Was it? I mean, people think of Texas, it's either skyscrapers or tumbleweeds. Were you out in the country? Was it suburban? What was it like for you, say in those junior high, middle school years?
yeah, no, we lived a couple miles away from NASA, so we were right there in the Nassau Bay area. If you were to sit on the roof of our house, I didn't, but if you were to, you could see the NASA buoyancy lab from the roof of our house. We were that close. So the Houston area, it's kind of like you said, skyscrapers or tumbleweeds. We were definitely in the skyscraper part of town, and the NASA area was really cool. Just getting to kind of get to grow up meeting people that literally went to space, and we had a couple astronauts that lived in our subdivision in our neighborhood. So I mean, for me, it was pretty interesting. It was definitely a transition from Chicago to that type of an environment. And then going into high school, like I said, I played volleyball, varsity volleyball, and also ran varsity cross country as well. Only did it for a little while with the cross country. Basically made varsity and left. I was like, running that far is not fun at all. And I always use the phrase cardio is cardio to describe running for myself. So it was more or less something that I did just to help me be a better volleyball player, but it wasn't necessarily something that I loved. But yeah, the Houston area is great. I'm up north of Dallas now. So, when I had an opportunity to come back to the Lone Star State, or as people down here say, the greatest country on earth, Texas, I jumped at that opportunity.
Now, you mentioned multiple sports, but obviously volleyball, was your main jam, if you will. What are some memories that you have as a high school student athlete? Did you think at the time, was that in your head, hey, I'm going to, play college, I'm going to play pro, or I'm going to be a coach? Was that something you thought about, or was it just, hey, I'm having a great time as a high school student athlete?
No, I mean, I wanted to play at the collegiate level. I had opportunities to play at the collegiate level, but I started having what led to a series of shoulder injuries and eventually neck injuries from the sport. I've had six total shoulder tears, three neck surgeries. So I was planning on attending a school up in Eastern Maryland, Washington College, which is a small D3, but didn't wind up getting to go just due to injuries and but I never thought when I was in high school that I was going to wind up being a coach. When I went to Houston, my degree was in criminology, my associate, and then an associate's in education. So, definitely wasn't really thinking about coaching until after I had graduated from college and I got the bug to get back into it and, started off just with local club teams and things like that and then kind of jumped off from there. But no, coaching was never part of the grand plan. And I kind of say, it found me. It was a calling that found me
Right.
at some point. But it was never the plan. If you had asked, 17, 18-year-old Ashley what she wanted to be when she grew up, probably would have been like, oh, I want to be a part of the DEA or the FBI or something along those lines. And coaching would not have been part of that conversation.
I love it. All right. Since it wasn't part of the plan, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you think back to, I'm a big moment guy. Can you think back to a moment in high school? It might have been the high school team, might have been a club team. Can you think back to a moment that at the time, it really didn't seem like much, but now looking back with wisdom and perspective, you can point to that moment and say, hey, that was a significant time in my life. Anything come to mind for you?
That launched me off into the sport deeper. I would say my freshman club, or I'm sorry, my freshman high school coach made a very negative comment to me and said at the time, when you're on the court, it's like having five players out there instead of six. And it was one of the most demoralizing things a coach had ever said. And um, it's always stayed with me because I think it's made me never want to be that coach to the kids that I work with. And then I was fortunate enough that exact same year to wind up with just a fantastic club coach who changed everything for me in the sport. And he's now a pastor. Actually, I keep tabs on him on Facebook, which doesn't surprise me that that's the path that he eventually went into for himself. But everything changed when I went from having the most negative coach I probably ever had to somebody who was not only a great teacher, but also a great mentor and really was able to launch me off from that point.
Wow. So sorry you had to experience that. But again, I think people, they come into our lives and they're great examples of what to do, or in this case, what not to do. Wow. It's so cool that you recovered from that. Let's go and take our first break. For our guests, our guest today, for our listeners, our guest is Ashley McDonough. We're coming back with more, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. We use it for home games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Your kids are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will have you up and running in no time, whether it's a simple social media post to celebrate a victory or an entire newsletter that showcases all the great things your department's doing in the community. The team at Gipper makes it easy. It's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. That's Gipper.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Ashley McDonough. Ashley, you started to share your story about, right out of college, you became a volunteer coach. I just think that is such an overlooked pathway to getting into college coaching. But take our listeners through that journey again and some of the other stops that you had that have brought you to your present career.
Right. So at the time, I was coaching for Livingstone's Christian School in Alvin, small private school, Alvin, Texas, and I was coaching their varsity team, or just about to start coaching their varsity team, actually. And I was coaching club volleyball with Gulf Coast Volleyball Association. So I had been coaching quite a bit at that point for a few years. And then, like I said, there was a new coaching staff turnover at the University of Houston, and it really was just as simple as me shooting over an email and just asking. And when I went into the coach's office, when I went there, my very first time to chat with the coach, she asked me what was it that I wanted to learn and what I wanted to gain from that experience. And for me, I was pretty, I don't I was confident. I'll just say I was pretty confident in myself. And I, said, look, I know how to coach volleyball. I was like, but the big thing for me and what I want to learn and what I want to gather from this experience is what do y'all do behind the scenes? I want to learn how to recruit. I want to learn what marketing looks like. I want to learn what game day operations looks like. And so they were like, well, sure, cool. And so basically my role was at the time, we University Athlete was kind of, I think, just really starting to get bigger around that time, if I recall the timeline correctly. And so, not all tournaments were really using it. And so, some of the things I did back then was just help the coach plot out, okay, I need to see this player, this player, this player, this player. And I would look at all the schedules and try to put them in order so that way she could go watch them at some of these bigger club tournaments. Or I would help, hey, Ashley, can you go help the equipment manager go pump up volleyballs? Can you do this? And it was that kind of stuff, And Nicole Miller, who had a long and tremendously successful career in college coaching, she was the assistant coach at the time and recruiting coordinator. And I did most of my work in her office. And I attribute a lot of what I know about recruiting and the process to her because she was such a great mentor for me. She was younger than me, but she was such a great mentor for me. And she, let me do things like create the monthly newsletter that the program sent out. I would help out with things like writing letters to recruits and writing cards, helping do graphic work and some of their short video, promo videos that we would create for camps and things like that. And so I feel like without that experience, I don't know that I would have been prepared for college coaching because, so much of what college coaches do is not on the court. And so I would say, I would argue that 75% of my time was not spent on the court, as a collegiate coach. And so that experience really for me was like, whoa, this is awesome. And so it was beyond volleyball. It also stimulated the part of my brain that was interested in business. And because I had just finished my MBA at the time. And so it gave me a lot more than what I think I expected coming into it. And it made me really want to make a career out of that.
We use the phrase to talk about new athletic directors, could also very easily be about new coaches. You don't know what you don't know. And what you just described there, I mean, that's, I mean, all those things and then some that a young coach, volleyball or otherwise, just doesn't have any idea that this is part of the job. You mentioned 75%. I might even go a little bit higher than that. Um, what was the next stop in your journey as a young coach? Where did you end up next?
Yeah, my first paid arguably paid. It was a stipend job at a college, was at Cayuga Community College. It's in Auburn, New York, just outside of Syracuse. And so definitely a culture shift going from being around Division One, high caliber Division One programs and coaches to being launched into a D3 JUCO. And then obviously the transition just from being in South Texas or Southeast Texas to upstate New York, quite a culture shift and definitely a weather shift. That was tough for me to I think adjust to a little bit, but yeah, Cayuga was great though. I will say it was a challenge because, like I said, it was a stipend role, in a lot of JUCO programs, it is a stipend that you receive as a coach there, and so I found a way to make it livable on $8,000 a year. Found a couple other side jobs at the college that I could do, helping out in the fitness center. I was an adjunct professor in both the education and the business departments. Taught a couple of classes while I was there. Eventually became a resident director, and I moved into the dorms so that way I didn't have to pay for living. And I made it work. And I think a lot of coaches go through a similar experience, especially when you're very first starting out. You're kind of willing, whether it's a volunteer role or a GA role or it's a junior college, role where you're only getting a stipend, but if that's your way in, that's your way in, and you just kind of grab onto it and do your best so that way you can move up and out, at some point. And that's kind of where I was. And then eventually I was hired on after a couple of years there with Knox College in Western Illinois, high academic Division III school. Really enjoyed it. I said at the beginning of this, I'm originally from Chicago, so for me, it was, yes, it was a step up in the terms of coaching, but for me it was I got to go live closer to family and to friends and things like that. Most of my family is from Illinois and Wisconsin, so I was able to be closer to family by taking the job out in Western Illinois and really enjoyed my time there. And kind of did the same thing when I moved on to Centenary College. Family lived in Texas still, and me being in Shreveport, Louisiana with that role, I was close to family again. And then obviously all my friends and everybody that I had, grew up with in the Houston area, being a few hours away from them at that point. So I think for me, it got to a point where it wasn't so much necessarily about chasing divisions. It was about being where I wanted to be. And so I also really love the D3 model that helps athletes balance being an athlete, a student, do their internships, study abroad, and all of those things too. So I just really like the Division III model, and I found a home there.
Yeah, again, I think that's something that's lost on a lot of kids, sometimes a lot of parents too, is that, you can have a great college experience as a student athlete, even if you're not, as they like to say, going pro in your sport. You could end up with a business degree or something else that you love that you're going to do the rest of your life and still play college athletics. Um, Making that transition from assistant to head coach along the way, were there any other things that you found out that you didn't know you didn't know?
I think recruiting, because initially I was helping out with recruiting tasks. When I was tasked with recruiting, that definitely was a shift. And so I think I went into it thinking, oh, well, this is going to be easy. What kid doesn't want to play in college? And then I realized quickly, not everybody wants to live in upstate New York and go to a D3 JUCO. And so it was definitely a lot more challenging for me. Once I was in the thick of recruiting, it became more real. And I did find that was probably eventually, not at the moment, but eventually it became one of my greatest strengths as a college coach, is I'm very good with recruiting and the recruiting process. And so, but that would probably have been my biggest challenge initially at Cayuga was, whoa, there's a lot more kids that are going to tell me no than yes. And I had to get past my own ego, and I had to get past my own perception of what recruiting was supposed to be like and who I was supposed to be attracting and things like that. And so I learned very quickly that not only is recruiting hard, But recruiting is not the same from one school to the next. It's extremely different, and the strategy that you have to take at each school is very different. The marketing strategy you have to take is very different. You have to find a very specific type of athlete for each school. And, I can say, go helping out at the University of Houston and then just say, okay, you go to Centenary. Centenary, they specialize in bio pre-med. They have a higher med school acceptance rate than Harvard. And so you're not just looking for a kid who wants to play D3. For me, it was then also looking for kids who wanted to do bio pre-med. And so I'm looking for these super high academic kids who are great athletes who also then want to live in Shreveport, Louisiana on top of it all. And so, there's so many different pieces you have to put together and figure out, okay, what's my type? What's the school's type? And then how do you tailor your recruiting strategy for that particular school? Because I couldn't have recruited at Cayuga the way I recruited at Centenary. You couldn't recruit the way at Centenary you did at Knox. It's so vastly different. And so just learning how to navigate the recruiting process and figuring out how do I market and tailor this program to different types of athletes and be successful.
Yeah, we also call it finding that right fit, whether it's for kids or coaches or sometimes even parents. It's got to be a good fit in a number of different areas. Ashley, we're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, find out more about, what you're doing or just add you to their network, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Either through my website or just shoot me over an email. My email is very public. I don't hide it. It's coachedbychrist@gmail.com. And then that's also the name of my website as well, which is www.coachedbychrist.com as well. So,
We're going to hear about that and a lot more. So please stay with us. We're going to take another break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Snap Raise for their support of the podcast. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. I'm telling you, it works. Go to snapraise.com and you can check out all of their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. We'd also like to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results. For me, the athletic clearance and eligibility platform alone is the gold standard. You really have to see it to believe it. To find out more, just go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. And we want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. But when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming. But there's a lot more. Go to huddle.com. You can join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Ashley, you've taken our listeners on your journey as a college coach, but you stepped away from college coaching, but you're still kind of in the game. Share with our listeners what you're doing now.
yeah, so I accepted a position with NCSA in the late fall of 23, and I'm a volleyball recruiting coach with them. So what my role is that I help student athletes navigate the recruiting process. And I think that's one of the biggest upsides to NCSA. I mean, I can say, obviously I was very familiar with the company from college coaching. I used to use NCSA a ton to watch film on kids, look at their transcripts, look at their grades. It's kind of a one-stop shop. And so I found the platform as a coach to be very useful. And at one of my friends, who also used to work at Centenary a long time ago, he at the time was a soccer recruiting coach for NCSA, and that was my connection to the company to be hired on with them. I knew that I wanted to get out of college coaching because I'm also a scuba dive master, and I wanted to be able to spend more time underwater and also still get to talk volleyball. And so now I get to help kids, navigate the process, help connect them to programs, open their eyes up to all the different opportunities. And there's 1,900 colleges in the United States. I think 1,400 of them have volleyball programs at all divisions and at all levels. And so there's no way for a kid to know what all is out there with those sorts of numbers. And so just being able to help kids see, this might be an option here, this might be an option here, and really just kind of duck dive into all the different opportunities that are out there. One of the things I said before is I really like the Division III model just because it does help kids balance and get a balance of a complete student athlete experience, especially for kids wanting to study things like bio pre-med, engineering, some of those programs that might be a little bit more challenging at the Division I level. And so a lot of kids just don't know, oh, well, I could do this here. Oh, now you're telling me I can also do study abroad. Oh, I can also do this. And so just getting to educate families and have conversations and get to know these kids and help place them where they're going to find the most success athletically, academically, and socially, I think for me is what, I think it's really cool. And one of the things that I was concerned about moving away from college coaching and into an arena like this was, the reason I love coaching was because of relationships. The relationships you build with these kids and the athletes that you mentor. I mean, I'm going to Memphis this weekend for one of my former guy athletes, his wedding, and like those kind of experiences are just nothing that you can put a price tag on. And so that was a concern, was like, okay, now working online, is this still going to be a thing? And I can tell you that the relationships that I've been able to form with some of these kids, especially the ones that I talk to regularly, it's just been fantastic. And then getting to see them reach the finish line and pick their school and commit and get a text or an email from the kid going, okay, coach, I made my decision. I'm doing my signing day on such and such a day. Like, it's such a reward knowing that I had, even just a small piece of that. And it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
There's a lot of let's say recruiting services, recruiting options out there. I was just on the NCSA website the other day, and I see that I'm actually reading it right now. They're the official recruiting partner of NAI, National Junior College, USA Volleyball, USA Baseball, USA Youth Soccer, and a bunch of other national organizations. That's pretty good groups to be associated with. Can you walk our listeners through, and again, who are our listeners, athletic directors and coaches, about maybe how they can find out more about NCSA? Obviously, go to the website, but what are some of the things that really stick out for you as a recruiter for them that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I just think that we're a great resource. I have a friend who is like at a lot of small colleges, we wear a lot of hats. And so, his role is a volleyball coach, but he also assists his athletic department in an admin role as well, just helping out even some of their other teams identify athletes and access some of these coaches such as myself who, have kids that are available, looking for the right fit, looking for the right programs. And so I think that even, just being able to say, hey, here's a list of kids that we think might be a good fit for you. Especially at a lot of small colleges, whether they're NAIA or Division III, even small private D2s, a lot of those schools are very enrollment driven. And so, when we're able to help provide lists of kids that would be a good fit for that school, culturally, athletically, academically, would be a good community member and, anything else. I think that we're a huge value there because we have so many kids on our platform that we talk to and we work with on a daily basis. I think from an athletic director or a coach standpoint, that's where we can help fill a lot of gaps. And so when we're able to form these really strong relationships with college coaches, it not only helps our student athletes, but it also helps these these programs out too that, they're in competition with all these other colleges for the same kids half the time. They're all going after similar. And so when we're able to identify a kid that we might go, hey, this one's a diamond in the rough, they're just not getting the attention they deserve, because we're all college coaches. It's a prerequisite for NCSA. In order to be a recruiting coach, you had to have been a college coach. And so we know what these coaches and programs are looking for because we've been there, we've done it. And so, when we're able to be a resource for those schools and those programs, I think that's huge. It's not just a benefit to the athlete, but the programs, especially the small enrollment driven ones, are really going to benefit from us.
Yeah, I know you've got hundreds and hundreds of success stories that you could share. Can you pick out one that maybe really touched your heart over the past year or so that you can share with our listeners?
I can share with y'all the same story I just shared with all of our other recruiting coaches. So I had a transfer client recently. Kid from Nebraska was playing at a Division III school in Minnesota. We helped her get on with that program a couple of years ago, and then she came back to NCSA because even when you have an NCSA membership, even if you decide to transfer after you've already committed, you're not necessarily in high school still, you can still come back to us and say, "Hey, I'm going to be transferring. Can y'all help me?" So their membership doesn't disappear. What they paid for in the past still covers them. And so, and with the prevalence of the transfer portal and things like that, I think that that is just another huge perk for us. And, why a kid would want us. And so, anyways, I had this kid who, like I said, was D3, was at a small school D3 in Minnesota, came back to us, said, "Hey, I'm looking at transferring, changed my major to something that the school didn't offer. I'm looking for some different opportunities." And so the kid was assigned to me. I wasn't her original recruiting coach, but she was reassigned to me to help her transfer. And we met the last week of her college season this past year. And she, the conversation I had with her was like, okay, first of all, you need to go talk to your coach. And you also need to go talk to your compliance people at your school because we're not going to surprise anybody here. And so I need you to go have those conversations. Once you have, let's meet again and let's discuss what these next steps are. I was like, but you got to be forward and honest first. And so we started there. Season ended. She contacted me. We set up another meeting about a week after season ended. And I gave her a list of things to take care of over the holidays. And so I said, okay, look, I need you to go back into your Common App. You need to start adding all the schools again that you are interested in transferring to. I need you to make sure that you've got all of your updated college transcripts added to that. I need you to make sure that you've come up with a list of probably 15 or 20 Division III schools that you would be most interested in because that truly was her level. And so she did all those things. We met the first week of January and she goes, okay, I did all the things you told me to do over the holidays. I was able to get on the phone with several different college coaches and she told me which ones they were. And I just started to die laughing. And I go, because she said Austin College was one of them and it's in Sherman, Texas. And I was like, you're kidding me. She goes, oh my gosh, is that a bad school? I was like, no, it's a great school. I was like, I live in Sherman, Texas. And so she, came to do her visit with the coaches here. I was like, I never get to meet clients in person because we're an online company, but I was like, I'm not missing this opportunity. Went and had breakfast with the kid and her mom, and it was awesome. We had a great time, great conversation. And she wound up committing to Austin, and I'm so pumped because I'm going to get to go watch her play in the fall. And her and I have very, similar backgrounds in terms of faith and beliefs and things like that. And so, we've already made plans to go. She's going to, go to church with me and things like that when she gets here. And I just think that, like, going back before saying I was worried about not having these relationships that I had as a college coach, I still have them, and they're just different. It just looks different. I'm not wearing a whistle around my neck anymore, but I'm still getting to coach and mentor and be a part of these kids' lives. And it was just such a crazy, mix of perfect storm things to happen for this kid to wind up here. And so grateful that it happened that way, but it's awesome.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's a perfect story to share. One more time, give out the website, and that way listeners can not only contact you, but take a look at all the resources that you mentioned on the website.
Yeah, I think it's just NCSA. I mean, just do a quick Google. NCSA will pop up immediately 100 times over. We are the largest recruiting platform, I believe, worldwide for student athletes. So it's hard to miss us.
Yeah, and again, those affiliations, the official recruiting service, you can't beat that. Let's go and take another break. I know that's shocking for our regular listeners, but we are going to come back with more of our guest, Ashley McDonough. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and check out their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. I'm telling you, if you put one of these units in your gym lobby or your main school hallway, it's going to be a magnet for your student athletes, your coaches, even teachers. How about sponsors and alumni? You really need to see it to believe it. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their great products today. We also want to say thank you to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio, but my assistant athletic director did, along with thousands of others. And it was a great experience. It's just 20 months, totally online. And while he was completing his master's degree, he also completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Go to Ohio University and check out their online master in athletic administration. We'd also like to say thanks to our good friends at Hometown. Hometown is still changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions for things like, oh, yeah, big surprise, digital ticketing. They're still the number one digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. They also have fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more. Whether you're an athletic director, a head coach, or a school administrator, Hometown makes it easy for you and your school to save time, raise more money, and bring your entire community together. For more information, just go to hometown.com and don't forget to mention the podcast. That's hometown.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Ashley, you have shared your coaching career, your work with National College Scouting Association, but you also have founded your own company, your own organization. Can you share a little bit with our listeners about how that all came about and what is it?
Yeah, so I have an online platform called coachedbychrist.com, and I am your stereotypical broken athlete. I've had six total shoulder tears, and I've had three neck surgeries. And when I first started at Centenary College in 2019, we weren't even a week into preseason, I don't think, and I had sustained an injury at practice again. And it led to the next 4 or 5 years of a lot of PT, a lot of doctor visits, and within a 2 year stretch, that landed me with another labrum repair surgery. I wound up having to have two tears repaired in my right labrum, and then also had three neck surgeries. And all four of those surgeries happened within a 2 year stretch, almost day to the day. It was December of 20 through December of 22. And so I had, like I said, the two shoulder tears repaired, and I also had a 5/6/7 fusion, a C4 replacement, and a C7 laminotomy, all in a very short window. And so you can imagine what being put under anesthesia that many times in a short period does to a person. The amount of medications that they had me on for nerve pain, muscle spasms, pain, you name it, and if there's a drug out there for any of those things, I promise at some point they've given it to me. And what happened was in the 2022 season, a negative drug interaction between two of the medications, a nerve pain medication and a muscle relaxer that they had me on, was causing anterograde amnesia, and it lasted for several months. And the way that we figured out what was going on, because when I say I had anterograde amnesia, it sounds funny to word it this way, but it wasn't funny to live it, was the movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore, where she couldn't remember the day before. And so that's why it's called 50 First Dates. It's like she had to meet a new person every day. And it kind of felt like that for me. It got to the point where I was even having to keep a photo roster in my phone to remember my players' names at practice. And it was really bad. And one of my players' parents, the pharmacist, and called me one day when we were on one of our road trips, and she asked me to give her a list of all the medications that they had me on, and she's the one who caught it actually, and had me stop taking one of the medications at the time. Was like, please don't take this again. And it took months for my brain to really start to come back to normal. And just as I felt like I was quote unquote starting to be normal again, I had to have my last surgery, and that was the C4 replacement. So around January of 23, I decided that I wasn't sure, or I was kind of toying with the idea of leaving coaching at that point, because I was like, is it worth doing all of this anymore? It's literally killing me. It almost took out my brain. Fortunately, I had someone who was able to intervene. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so while recovering from that last surgery, I was literally sitting on my couch with my laptop out, and I was scrolling LinkedIn job postings because I was like, maybe there's something else I should be doing instead of putting myself through all of this any longer. It was making for a very difficult home life, a very difficult just existence, when your brain starts to go and your body's going at the same time. So, it was, and I've said this before, I swear I'm not crazy, but to me, it sounds crazy saying it out loud, but it felt like I literally heard the voice, of saying, of a higher power, God talking to me, saying more or less, like, you don't need to stop coaching, but you need to shift the way that you're doing it. Here, start writing about the intersection of faith and athletics. And the crazy thing is I would still have called myself agnostic at the time. And that's why it was even weirder. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? And so I was sitting on my couch recovering from surgery. What else did I have to do? I figured, why not? And so I bought the domain and started writing articles. And to be honest, like at the beginning of it all, for me, it was very academic. And I was approaching the whole thing from an academic lens, just researching. And the more I researched Christianity, the more I researched um, just that realm that I had, walked away from, it kind of started to shift things within me. And then it was like, the more I was writing about this stuff, the more I started seeing, and it's kind of like, when you think your phone's listening to you, it's one of those things where I felt like LinkedIn and everything else online was listening to me or tracking what I was writing about. And so I started getting just bombarded with ads from Liberty University on doing a graduate cert in ministry. And I was like, well, I said yes to the start in the website, might as well roll with this too. And so that summer, I did my graduate cert. I took 4 additional master's courses through them, did my graduate cert in Christian ministry. And around that time, because even going through all of that, literally having a website that focuses on some Christianity, faith, athletics, doing my grad cert in ministry, I still 100% couldn't be definitively defined as a Christian. And so fast forward a couple of months, and the tone of my writing definitely started to change around that time from an academic lens to more of a personal one. And going through my 23 season, my final collegiate season, um, some personal things were going on. I had moved out of my house. I wasn't living with my spouse any longer, and I was still trying to physically recover from all of, the 4 surgeries that had happened over the past couple of years. And at that point, I was just really trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do next? And doing all of those things and moving and doing all that while trying to coach a college team is not easy. It is hard. And you feel like you're losing your mind half the time. And thank God I had the assistant coach and the athletic director that I had who were both incredibly supportive. And so I finished my 23 season. I had already kind of determined that I was going to be leaving. I had connected with NCSA. And so I go to church. one that my athletes were going to. It wasn't my church. I was a visitor. And I go in and I sit down and they had handed me a Diet Coke and a bag of popcorn. And I was like, what is happening? This one better not be one of those weird churches. And like, you know, and so they apparently that church does a series every year where they use movie clips and connect it to sermons and things like that. And it's just something they do once a year. And I just happened to arrive that day and they were doing clips from the movie King Richard. And that was the Williams sister and, Will Smith is in it and so they put this up on the big screen. Well, IMG Academy is now the former Bradenton, the tennis academy, and IMG Academy is connected to us with NCSA. They are the brick and mortar version of NCSA. So we're partners with them. And so I'm sitting there. I had just been hired by NCSA maybe a week before. And now my brand new job is up on the big screen at a church. And I'm like, whoa, if this wasn't a sign, I don't know what is. And I just had that day at church, just kind of the culmination of everything that I'd gone through over the past few years, personally, physically, mentally, spiritually, the whole gamut. I decided that day that I wanted to submit and give my life to Christ. And I was baptized in that church less than a month later, and just kind of started really growing from there. And I put more effort into the website, and it just really, I've had opportunities to go on mission trip. I went to Ecuador last year. I've gotten to speak at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes event. I've gotten to do a bunch of really cool stuff just as a result. And the way that things kind of happened was just a little crazy, especially for someone who was agnostic to start all of this, from the get-go. And so yeah, it's just been quite a journey. And now on the website as well, you can see, I recently published my first book
Right.
and it's on the website as well. And it's called Save to Serve. And it just kind of talks about my experience in coaching and kind of looking back in hindsight, knowing what I know now, how do I see God on the court in my life, even though I might not have seen it then? And how do I apply that to leadership principles and to coaching and mentoring? And hopefully somebody else finds, the same value that I did in writing it. And yeah, yeah, I know my story's a little different than most, but it's pretty
No,
cool.
no, not at all. Boy, I really appreciate you sharing that journey because we're all on our own journeys and just some incredible points that you make. You mentioned the book as I was doing my cursory research for this. I saw that you had the book Save to Serve. It's on Amazon. I did look it up. It's actually outperforming my book right now in sales. So congratulations. I did order a book. Maybe that's why I bumped up your sales there. But you also on the website, and again, it's I got to get these right, coachedbychrist.com.
Yep.
Um, on the website, there's a lot of information, a lot of resources too. You also have a podcast, is that right?
I don't have my own. I've just been on a lot of them.
Okay.
But yeah, I've written over 100 articles. I've written about 120 or so now over the last 2 years. I think I've touched on. So if anybody's got any ideas for articles, pass them along because I've run out. But how many topics are there kind of thing? But no, I've written about 120, 130 articles over the last 2 years, just talking about different issues and things that come up in the intersection of faith and athletics and how do we apply, faith to athletics and what can we learn from it and how can we practice it?
Boy, again, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Certainly appreciate you sharing your journey and where you're at right now. And here's the cool thing. I mean, you're still at the beginning, really, of your journey. You got a lot of way to go. So good for you. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with our athletic director toolbox segment. Now, you have never been an AD, but you certainly know your way around the world of athletics and leadership. And so we're going to take our final break here from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this segment. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director, a brand new leader, if you will, on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in the toolbox. So let's take that break. And when we return, we're going to see what Ashley McDonough puts in her new athletic director toolbox. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. You know, athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you to that group so you can hear their concerns and hopefully address them before they turn to something big. But they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And that information, having that data, it's incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated parent or student athlete, or maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Check them out today. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with Ashley McDonough. We're going to have to get her back on the podcast. Just a great background in athletics and education, recruiting. But right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let her put 3 items in that toolbox. So, Ashley, what 3 things are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
So the first one would be that culture beats talent every time. Talent might bring the recognition or short-term results, but it's going to be the culture that, it sustains the growth. And so the way that people treat each other and how they handle adversity and what they do when no one's watching, those things are what shape the long-term health of any program or organization. And so build a culture that outlasts performance cycles. That would be the first one. The second one would be to lead with consistency, not control. And I think that strong leadership is not about having all of the answers, but it's about showing up just with steadiness and integrity. And you don't need to control every detail to be effective. What people remember is how you led when things were hot, when you were in the kitchen. And so they remember, how you own your decisions and you're accountable, and then how you make space for other people to grow as well. And then I would say the last one would be that, and this is me just speaking from personal experience here, is that your role might change, but your mission doesn't. And so whether you're on the sidelines, whether you're now behind the desk, or you're mentoring from a distance, our influence and your influence, it still matters. So leadership isn't necessarily about the title, but it's about how you serve and how you serve other people. So just, I would say, stay grounded in your values and just trust that your impact is going to continue even after your role changes.
Wow, you probably noticed me frantically scribbling those down. I love your turn of phrase. The first one, culture beats talent, and then consistency beats control, or consistency over control. That is just so good. Um, we don't want to forget about all your resources. One more time, let's go and give out, the book, the website, and how our listeners can reach out and connect. Because listeners, I think you got a tremendous resource here.
No, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. So the book is called Save to Serve, Lessons in Coaching, Faith, and Life. And then the website is www.coachedbychrist.com. And the email is just as easy. It's coachedbychrist@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from people.
Well, Ashley, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with our listeners. All the best moving forward with the book and all your many activities going on. And we're definitely going to have to bring you back on the podcast down the road to get an update.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate this. It's been great. Thank you very much.
And we want to say thanks to our listeners and just remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day. We try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.